We're talking offensive linemen in the 2025 NFL Draft. Matt Williamson's rankings for the top offensive tackles, the top interior offensive linemen coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for stopping in. Let us know you're here. If you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up. I'm sure you're already subscribed, notification bell, so you know when there's a new episode. And if you're new to the program, we appreciate you stopping in, hang out with us as we talk draft, trades, free agency, everything going on all off season long, headed toward the 2025 season here on Peacock and Williamson. You can subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And today's episode of P&W is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Let's get into it. Offensive line, it's an interesting class, and I think I have a pretty good grasp on what's going on with the offensive tackles in this class, Matt.
Yeah.
It's the interior guys that I'm having a little bit more trouble figuring out. And how do you see this class as a whole before we get going? And then let's jump into your rankings. We'll start with tackle, and then we'll get to the guards and centers as well.
Well, I think there's a ton of these tweener types that are going to probably start their career at tackle, and if they fail, bump inside. And there really are very few prototypical tackles. I mean, I keep mentioning, Joe Alt comes to mind as one of the more recent prototypical tackles. I think would be in contention for second, third pick in this draft, and there are guys I like, led by Membou, who's very, very impressive. But most of these tackles to me look like guards. The interior group overall is pretty weak. And I've been even asked, especially with the Steeler background and stuff, like Fawaga or Fatanu, where would they rank in this class? And I'm like, one or two, pretty high. They're tackles, and they were the fifth and sixth ones off the board last year or something like that, Yeah,
it was a really good class last year. I think Membou would go over those guys, but
probably
it would have a good argument to be, two, and certainly, in the top five of the rankings here, and possibly two or three, because there's just enough questions about most of them. And that's what Membou did such a great job of at the combine.
Yeah.
And, spoiler, he's your number one offensive tackle in this class. And I think
I don't think it's real close. I mean, like the tape is, but just as a prospect, I keep hearing these Tristan Wirfs comparisons, and I see that, and I'm actually on board with that. Right.
Right. There's so many comparisons to Tristan Wirfs. He's just a hair shy of Wirfs as far as like freakiness with his workout numbers. But that's the thing that Armand Membou did at the combine, was he showed up over 6'4", because you see his build and you're like, that guy kind of looks like a guard because he's so wide and thick
and wide.
And he's not tall. He's not 6'7" or anything, but he's 6'4", plenty tall to be an NFL offensive tackle. 332 pounds. But for him to run as well as he did, he had long arms. They got a half-inch shorter somehow between the Senior Bowl and the. I think wasn't he
right?
What isn't he, 34 inches at one point, and then it was.
I think he was one that they changed dramatically.
Yeah. So like 32.5-inch arms, which is totally fine for Armand Membou, and so he just kind of like. He just like kicked the door open and was like, look, I've got everything. 4.9, 40-yard dash, crazy athletic ability. You see some awesome reps on tape, maybe not quite as consistent. He's a younger guy still and has some work to do. So the tape grade, you're like, well, clearly a first rounder. Maybe would he be better at guard? He did play right tackle and not left tackle. Then he goes to the combine and he's just like, look, if there was any ties here, those ties are broken now. And I'm the top offensive tackle in this class. And he's really the top. He's almost like the only tackle, because you start looking at the guys like, well, Josh Simmons, tape is great. He would have an argument to be the top left tackle in this class, but you don't get any workout numbers from him throughout the offseason. So even if you think his I always forget what the injury is. It's a really bad one for offensive linemen. It
bad
was
knee one, I think. Yeah,
but it's the gosh dang it, what's the name of the tendon?
He tore the patellar tendon.
Patellar tendon, right?
Yeah,
and it's like that thing ends careers left and right. So that's going to be a really tough one. But he's still like one of the top tackles in his class, right? So talk to me about your rankings and how you got to Membou at 1, and then what's right after that.
I went with Will Campbell, and I was a little generous to put him at tackle, but he is just a smidge under 6'6", and I believe that his new team will start him there. So I put him with the tackles, but deep down, I think he's Zach Martin. Which is wonderful. Zach Martin's going to the Hall of Fame. He's the poster boy for big-time college player that was a tackle that goes inside the guard and is great. But good, yeah.
Really quick with the arm length, I've heard some people start talking about, and maybe this is more hopeful than anything else, because for me, Will Campbell goes straight inside, like period.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, because, and I'll talk about a few things on tape, but one thing I've heard people talk about is arm length is super important, but then you can maybe fudge it because of wingspan.
Yeah, right. If you're a wider chest, right.
And so are you big enough to where, but it's like, you don't block people with your arms out, you block people with your arms forward. So what should really matter is like the chest to palm measurement, right? So
good point. Not even fingertips, right?
I don't care how wide your chest is. You don't block people sideways. You block them in front of you, right? Ideally, you keep them in front of you. So I guess wingspan can help a little bit, but I'm definitely looking arm length way more than wingspan for offensive tackles. And he's 32 and a half, right? Is that what it was?
He's a guard.
That's guard. And then here's the thing: you go to the tape. Okay, the tape was awesome. And I loved what I saw on tape. Yeah. Maybe you could argue he's a better pure football player than Armand Membou right now. He is super smart. You hear him in interviews. Teams are going to love Will Campbell.
Leader,
this guy's floor is so high, even if he's a guard. But when did he look not as good? You put on the South Carolina tape, and then Kennard, the edge rusher, gave him a lot of trouble. And then you look at Kennard, 34-inch arms, right?
Yeah, so he's an NFL player, right? Yeah.
That's why you move into guard. We talked about it in the Super Bowl. Joe Tooney, why was he? He was a left tackle in college, instantly went into guard and was an all-pro guard, shorter arms. He gets forced outside to play left tackle for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. He gets beat up by Josh Sweat, 34.5-inch arm length. Like, it matters. And as crazy it is, it matters. So for me, Will Campbell deserves to be here as far as the rankings go with offensive linemen, but to me, he is going to be a guard all day. Maybe a center too. Who knows? He's really smart. If a team that has a center make all the calls and stuff, I could see that. But most likely he's going to be a really good guard in the NFL. We'll see if a team tries him at tackle first.
Should have mentioned, because really prevalent for this class, and I think we've discussed it, and I know you know this, but teams are looking for 34-inch arms. That's ideal. That's great. No worries whatsoever. 33 and longer is a red flag. It's a concern, but there's been a lot of very successful, a handful. I mean, Penei Sewell, Joe Thomas. I mean, there's been successful tackles with 33 or under. There's zero with under 33 a tackle. There's no cases that show that can happen. I mean, it's a 0% hit rate.
It's pretty much like if you're under 33, period, guard.
No chance. Right.
Don't mess around with anything else. I want to look at. I don't have the wingspan numbers, but apparently,
they're not as easy to find.
One of the success stories recently at tackle was
Slater.
Slater. So Rashawn Slater,
yep.
He was right at 33, so it's kind of the
he was real close, right?
He ended up going, and there was an argument: who's better? Is it Penei Sewell or is it Rashawn Slater in that draft class? Because Slater was so smooth, he was left tackle, and Penei Sewell ended up, being a right tackle. So that was an argument, and he was the second guy taken. I think there's a lot of reasons why, but he was the second tackle taken, and he's been solid. He's been good in the NFL, so it was a hit. But 33, and he was right at that minimum. But apparently, he had a long wingspan too, which helped teams feel more comfortable about it playing up rather than even playing down from what his arm length is. And if you have everything else and at least you hit the minimum, you're fine. But teams really want 34. But if you're sub 33, as crazy as it sounds, you're a guard.
And one thing you'll see a ton is like Khalil Mack's a poster boy for this, where he will get his body perpendicular to the tackle and long arm you right in the middle of your chest and drive you backwards with one arm, not giving you much to push at. And you can really see in that instance, and it happens a lot, but that's just the one visual I want to give people of, I can't get my arms on this guy quick enough because I'm trying to block the narrowness of his body while he's driving right through my chest.
It's the number one thing, hand placement for an offensive tackle, and there's nobody to help you out, and you're on an island out there. And if you can't get your hands on a pass rusher, it's a bad situation for you.
Absolutely.
So that's 1 and 2 on the list. And again, that Campbell's a really good player. Will he be a tackle? I'm not sure, but he deserves to be right after Membou, probably, as far as offensive linemen off the board in the 2025 NFL draft. Let's talk about the rest of Matt Williamson's offensive tackle rankings, get into some interior offensive linemen. A lot of guards, not so many centers in this class. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Upwork. And when you are trying to take your business to the next level, you're talking about scaling your business, it requires the right expertise and at the right time. And that's where Upwork comes in. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, so much more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or maybe a long-term partner, Upwork makes it simple, hiring simple and affordable. And talking about free and simple, posting a job is free at Upwork, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. This episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. If you ever checked your bank account and you wonder, where'd all that money go between dining out, online shopping? I'm pretty bad at budgeting, like those types of things. I'm like, I'm going to get coffee because I want coffee today. I'm going to go out to eat and I'm going to get the expensive steak, and that's okay. I'm going to get a cocktail along with it. And then you look at the bill, you're like, that's a lot, but I got some money, right? And you look at your bank account, okay, a little bit less than I thought maybe there. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And here's an important factor in all this too. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever with Monarch Money. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, so we got Armand Membou at the top. I think he's going to be the top offensive lineman off the board.
Yeah.
As high as pick 4, right? And to be honest with you, if I'm doing a mock draft, I don't think Membou goes past 4 or 5 because
100%. Because even if he is a guard, if you have tackles or whatever, I mean, you can't find those guys.
Versatile. I think he'll play in the left side just fine. Mm-hmm. And even if 2 quarterbacks go in the top 2 of the draft, and there's a couple of blue chippers there, and the Patriots go Travis Hunter at 4 instead of Membou, I'd probably just throw Membou at 5 to the Jaguars anyway. So I don't know if Membou gets out of the top 5 right now in this class.
I 100% agree. It would be an interesting conversation for the Patriots, Hunter, Carter, Membou. But
right,
I would understand Membou over those guys just because you can't find them.
So after that, we've got Membou 1.
Then it gets
Matt Williamson's draft. We got Will Campbell 2. And then where do you put Josh Simmons? He's 3 for you here. He deserves to be here. It's just like, I don't know. The medical stuff and the character stuff is really tough for folks like us that don't have access to all the information.
I say that over and over, and it's not a cop-out, but my least favorite job or least favorite thing about my job is talking about medicals because I know I don't know. So as a rule, I kind of give the players the benefit of the doubt, but I know that's not how the real world works, so I always have to preface that. He's a tackle. He's a very talented player. I don't know that he's the most talented tackle I've ever seen. Like, he wouldn't skyrocket to number 1 on this list, but I do think if he gets a clean bill of health, he's going to go up and up and up, just because the theme of this show, you can't find these guys anywhere else. You don't want to be tackle needy, and even interior lines getting really hard to find.
Yeah, and he's cleaner than a lot of guys on this list just as a prospect. He's got the length and he's got the entire profile. So it's all medical for Josh Simmons and where he ends up going. Kelvin Banks Jr. is an interesting one because I didn't love the tape. He could play guard, but he's got the physical ability and he checks a lot of boxes as well. And just to check boxes at tackle right now means you're going to go high. So the question for me is not if he ends up in the first round, it's just how high in the first round Kelvin Banks ends up going. And I guess we shouldn't be shocked if he's the second offensive lineman taken.
I suppose he's pretty clean. I mean, he's kind of been a big name guy forever. Some of his run blocking is not where you want it to be, and his arms length's a little short, but all in all, I think he's pretty safe, and maybe he's a guard, but I bet he's a tackle for the extent of his career, and a good, not great one,
Number 5 on your list is Josh Connerly, and he's a really interesting one. He was a former running back, apparently, in high school, and I want to go see that tape of what it looked like because he's 6'4" and 5'8", 311 pounds now. So what it was like, he must have been, Derrick Henry of his day back in Pop Warner football. But it tells you how athletic he is. And he's actually one of the guys that's a tackle and not a guard. Because he doesn't profile at all like a guard. He's not a power player. He is all about athleticism. And so Josh Connerly might be a player that if he's not kind of ready to jump in and start at left tackle for your football team, maybe he just kind of redshirts rather than plays guard.
I can see that. And again, I think his best stuff's ahead of him. He's a younger prospect. He's an athlete. He has some technique work to do, and it'd be great to get him stronger. But he's a tackle that you develop, and probably he'll get thrown in the mix right away because that's just how this world works in the league. But I think he's pretty close to guaranteed going in the first round too.
And if he goes to the second round, it's probably going to be very high. He's a top 50 guy all day, and probably a top 40 and probably top 25. We'll see. Everyone needs tackles. And then after Josh Connerly, there's not a lot more, right?
It's kind of easy to pick your 5.
Yeah, because there's I think there's some very interesting prospects. I know Charles Grant of William and Mary is kind of this year's who's the Yale tackle that went to the Bears last year.
Yeah. He's got a difficult name to say though. Yeah.
The small school guy that has the entire athletic profile, but didn't, he's raw, won't play right away. But man, if he's there in the third round for you, you're like, it's hard to find tackles, it's hard to find everyone that checks off all. He's like got 35-inch arms. There's
some third round tackles I kind of like, but they all have warts,
So he's a super interesting one for me. Who are your other sleepers or just missed as far as your rankings? Because you got Membou, Campbell, Simmons, Banks, and Connerly is your top 5.
Just a couple names people should know. Anthony Belton from NC State is a big mauling type. Emory Jones is the other side of the LSU tackle pairing. Maybe he's a guard. He's a little on the short side as well. Logan Brown is another project from Kansas who's highly recruited, a lot of ability, kind of taking a twisted road to get where he is. And the name that's going to go high that people probably be like, whoa, is Ozzie Trapilo from Boston College. I mean, he's like the Rob Havenstein right tackle, plug and play, gritty dude, You know
what? In this tackle class, there's not as many like super athletic, beautiful offensive tackles in the first round. But if you're a team that runs a little bit more of a power scheme, and you just need a big old offensive tackle, it's actually a good year because
there's
one of those guys outside of the first round, the Urseries and
Trapilo are good ones.
Some guys later into the draft that are really big guys that if you're not quite as worried about them running around and getting on the second level and just being just a big old offensive tackle, you can find some of those guys in this class.
Yeah. Jack Nelson from Wisconsin is a typical Wisconsin beat your face, slow-footed guy. There's a lot of those types,
Yeah, exactly. Let's get to the interior offensive lineman here. Not a great center class.
No.
But the top guy for you is Gray Zabel out of North Carolina State. He's really just aced the entire process, right? Like if you can have good film, even if you're a smaller school guy, if you can have good film, dominate your competition, which Zabel did, go to the Senior Bowl, look awesome there, then go to the Combine and do everything you need to do to ease any doubts for teams. you're going to go high, and that's what Gray Zabel did and has done, and probably, whether he's guard or center, and he's not he played tackle in college, 32-inch arms. He's not playing tackle. He's probably the number one center in this class, and maybe the number one guard as well.
I tend to agree. I mean, he is just under 6'6", but I don't think he's a tackle because he's 32-inch arms on the nose. And there's a lot of landing spots in the first round. Like, I can't believe he gets past the Chiefs, but there's a lot of landing spots in the first round for him, and he's acing the process. So I think he'll go high.
One thing I will say is, centers do tend to fall a little bit. It's like nickel defenders on defense. Like, I really like this guy, but we'll go a different direction because we just don't value this position enough, and centers seem to be that position, and I do think Gray Zabel's still a step below Graham Barton where he went Barton was last year. Not as good of an offensive tackle class, so he could still go higher, but Barton went like 26, so that's kind of the range I expect for Gray Zabel. You start to think about him in the 20s, and maybe he's the top of the second round, but he probably doesn't get far.
I don't know if he'll be a center or a guard, but I mean, the versatility will certainly help.
Tyler Booker has kind of been thought of as the top pure guard. If you're not Will Campbell in this class, he's number 2 for you, but he didn't have a great combine. So a lot of these teams running the zone and want to get guys out on the move might not like Tyler Booker as much.
Exactly. I think he's pretty scheme specific. He's considered a big time team leader. I guess he took over for Will Anderson as the Crimson Tide's, number 1 top dog. And he's an old school mash your face guard that 5-10 years ago, we didn't care if those guys didn't test well, but you do ask these guys to pull and do outside zone stuff a lot, and those teams will probably prefer Zabel or maybe even Donovan Jackson. Those to me are the top 3 easily.
And it's interesting what's happening scheme wise around the NFL because everyone takes from everyone so much now, and you see so few teams that just run like one thing all the time, right? And so like all the teams that used to run all wide zone all the time, they're like, man, teams know what's coming and they have a plan for this. So we got to do more gap scheme stuff. And it's the other way around too. If you're a gap team, you're like, but we still run wide zone because there's advantages we can get. So you kind of have to do both if you're an offensive lineman these days in the NFL.
And what I said about Booker though, is like, that's who you run behind on 4th and 1, that type of guy. And that's not every team will look at that a little differently. I mentioned Jackson. Jackson had to fill in for Simmons at Ohio State, and they won the national championship, and that worked out well. But it's the Tooney situation. He's a guard that they forced to tackle, and maybe the next team will ask him to do that. Or if he ends up on the Chiefs and one of their tackles falls apart, does he end up making that move? I don't know, but I think he's a guard. And those are the top 3. After that, you're reaching. Like there might not be any in the second round after that,
Let's talk some sleepers on the interior of the offensive line prospects for the 2025 draft next.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So here we go, finishing up the interior offensive line rankings. And, we're doing top 5, but I think there's some sleepers as well and some other names I want to throw out there. We got Gray Zabel 1, Tyler Booker 2, Donovan Jackson 3, and he did a pretty good job. Donovan Jackson did filling in for Josh Simmons at tackle.
Yeah, he
did. I do think he is a guard in the NFL, and that's probably how teams see him. And surprisingly, the next guy, Big Jonah, as they call him, out of Arizona, 6'4" and 8, 324 pounds. Not that much different size wise than Armand Membou. Like, could he actually play right tackle in the NFL?
Maybe. His combine was more athletic and more nimble than I expected.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of look at him and think, oh, he's just a masher. Yeah, he plays more like a guard, but I hadn't thought of that. But he was a tackle at Zona, and maybe he gets a crack at it or gets forced there, because of injuries or whatever.
Savayanea, I just want to get his last name right. I think that's how you pronounce it. Big Jonah Savayanea, Arizona, probably guard, but yeah, sub 5, 324 pounds.
He can move, yeah.
And by the way, 33 and 7/8 inch arm length. So it's like from an athletic profile and an arm length profile, you might have a right.
Not too bad. You might. You know, everyone has him as a guard. I put him as a guard, but I kind of thought about that a little bit too after his combine. Like maybe he should get a crack there, you know?
Legitimately not far off at all from Armand Membou. And we're kind of going crazy about how athletic Armand Membou was.
That is funny.
Like not that far off. Like Jonah helped himself, man. And I wouldn't be shocked if he goes pretty high. But you know, not as athletic when you watch the tape though, which is kind of the most important factor.
Yeah, he's not as great, you know, kick sliding and that kind of thing too, you know, but there is ability there.
Who's number 5 in your interior offensive line rankings?
I went with Tate Ratledge. People that paid attention to the combine or watched Georgia, right, remember him with the mullet, and you know he kind of has that look about him. I don't love 6'6.5" guards. You know, I mean it's a little tall for me, but he fights, and you know it was hard to come up with 5. To be honest with you, that you were pretty comfortable with as early picks. You know?
That is one of the interesting factors here because there's a lot of tall guys with short arms. Like Zabel is almost 6'6". Will Campbell too, and it's like, oh, go inside. It's like, well, the leverage isn't going to be super easy for these guys inside.
No.
One of the things I saw at the Senior Bowl with Zabel, he stayed in front and stayed blocked on almost every single rep, but he also got pushed back sometimes, and you can get under him. So as a center in the NFL, right,
a little tall.
And so it's not perfect for some of these guys that are really tall to just move inside, especially if you're only 308 pounds at 6'6". You might lose some leverage battles inside.
I mean, Dexter Lawrence exists,
right?
I mean that's what you deal with.
The NFL, that's for sure.
Right. I mean, everyone has some bowling ball, or the tall guys can get low. The DeForest Buckners and Cam Haywards and those type of guys are no fun. I mean, they'll bully you right back, even though they're as tall as you. You know.
Some other sleepers and honorable mentions. I do want to shout out another guy that looked awesome at the combine, helped him out a lot. The center from Georgia playing next to Tate.
Yeah.
There, Jared Wilson, 6'3", 310. If you're not as worried about leverage there at 6'3" and 310 pounds, really just hit a home run with athleticism. 4.84 in the 40-yard dash, which is I think fastest among all offensive linemen.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And 32-inch vertical, 9.4 broad jump, really at the top of almost every test that he did. 1.72 in the 10-yard split, which is so important for an interior offensive lineman, especially a center to get out and win the advantage. I think there was Josh Connerly was the only offensive lineman with a faster 10-yard split, the former running back. And so Jared Wilson, if you're looking for a starting center and a guy that's going to go outside of the top 50 for sure. Late 3rd round. I'm not sure exactly where Jared Wilson would go, but I think he's gonna be a starting center in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a good one. A name I think we have to throw out is Marcus Membou from Purdue. I mean, I think he's probably a day 2 player. He's fine. I mean, I don't love him or dislike him or anything like that. I kind of like Jalen Rivers as a tackle from Miami. That's probably a guard. Miles Frazier from LSU. Did a little tackle stuff at the Senior Bowl, but he's a guard all day long. Again, I mean, if you're looking for interior, or frankly, if you're looking for starting offensive linemen, I need to find 2 starters in this draft. Good luck, man. I mean,
it's a little bit difficult. There's a lot of warts. There's like, dude, you talked about the 6'6" guys that are short armed and you have to go inside. Wyatt Millam from West Virginia, another one.
Good one.
Missed on Will Campbell early. You might want to go day 2, day 3. I don't know where Wyatt Millam is going to end up going, but the tape is good. But he's 6'6.5", 313, short arms, didn't run well at all. The tape is good. You know, some offensive line coaches are going to like him, but it's hard to draft these guys early. And I just think we're going to just see the crazy run on defensive linemen and some tight ends and running backs going ahead of a lot of these offensive linemen.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to centers really quick, just because last year was crazy. Like, people remember there was Powers Johnson, there was Graham Barton, there was Zach Frazier that everyone looked at as, okay, those are the starters. But BB in Dallas, Limmer with the Rams. I mean, there's going to be 5 or 6 starting centers out of last year's class, where this year's more like the norm, where you get like 1 or 2, or you manufacture a guard into a center, or,
maybe a record for players that play a different position in the NFL than they played in college on the offensive line.
I think it will be. That's a great way of putting it. Right. Drafted players that play a different position. Last year was the weird tackle class where if you're a right tackle, we're going to make you a left tackle. If you're a left tackle, we're going to make you a right tackle.
Yeah.
But
The
I
team
don't
drafted
know why that worked out. But
yeah,
right.
This is a forced inside issue. A little bit
right.
more.
Like you're not a tackle.
There's one prospect that I haven't been able to put the tape on yet that fascinates me because of the short shuttle, which is the number one testing
Very important
variable at the combine. If you run a 4.47 short shuttle or faster, you're almost a guaranteed hit. It's like nearly 100% hit rate in the NFL.
Yep.
Zero offensive linemen that ran a short shuttle cleared that in this class.
Well, very few run them anymore.
Well, and a lot of
right.
Like, the fast guys like Connerly should have run it. Maybe that helps him, especially the guys that are going to be later round picks. And I just want to highlight one guy that came the closest, a 4.49, so just a hair off. And I would say, if you fudge that to anything sub 4.5 in the short shuttle, Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, 6'4.5", 312, 5'1" in the 40, 34-inch vertical, which was second highest among offensive linemen, I think. And then he hit that 4.49 in the short shuttle. So if you're just drafting based on workout numbers at the combine, and he's good enough to be invited to the combine, I got to get to the tape on Caleb Rogers to see what kind of NFL player he might be. But a name to watch there.
That's a good one. Good one. I was just pulling up Lance Zierlein's write-up on him. He's got over 4,200 career snaps. So big-time Ironman type guy. So there's a lot of us to find on him, right?
There you go. There's my sleep. I'm not even going to look at the tape. Sleeper.
Yeah, it's good to know, though.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Let us know what you think. If you disagree with Matt Williamson's offensive line rankings, hit him up at Williamson NFL. If you love the rankings, hit me up at BD Peacock and let me know what we're doing here. Of course, you can get your questions in for next week's mailbag anytime you want. And make sure for your second listen, you check out another of the 200 podcasts here on the network. Locked On NFL Draft, getting ready for the draft every single day. You got Matt Williamson on Wednesdays, Locked On Dynasty. On Fridays, he's with Wig on Locked On NFL. I'm hosting Locked On 49ers every day. And we appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.